Joining us now is U.S. Attorney General Loretta Lynch, and we welcome you to the broadcast, Madam Attorney General. Let's start with the latest on the investigation. What can you tell us?
Yes, well, the latest on the investigation is that obviously it's ongoing. We're moving quickly, and we're trying to uncover everything we can about this killer's motivations, what led him to this particular place, this particular club. Why did he target the LGBT community, a community that so often is the victim of hate crime in both an act of hate and terror? Tomorrow, we will be releasing a partial transcript of the killer's conversations from within the nightclub with the Orlando negotiators. After he called 911, obviously the hostage negotiators reached out to him to try and ascertain who was he, why was he doing this, and obviously the status of the victims. There were 3 calls, and we'll be releasing that partial transcript tomorrow.
We know he mentioned ISIS. What else did he talk about?
Well, he talked about what he was saying at that time were part of his motivations for why he was in the nightclub. Again, we have had a lot of conflicting information over the course of the investigation, so that information will be coming out. And we do want to be as transparent as possible in this investigation so people can see not only what he was thinking, what he was doing, but also the kind of information that we're looking at.
We know about that ISIS piece. What other pieces of the puzzle? Did he mention that this was a LGBT nightclub in his conversation?
He didn't in that conversation, but obviously we know that he apparently had some concerns or issues with the LGBT community. As I mentioned before, this is a community that is often targeted by acts of hate, and so we're very concerned about that issue as well. It was also Latin night at the club, so again, we're very concerned about the motivations that led him to that particular club at that particular place, and we want to make sure that those communities know that we are there to protect them as well.
What's your bottom line assessment of his connection to ISIS?
Well, right now we don't have any information that shows that he was being directed by anyone overseas, but we do have information that shows that over the course of time he, like sadly too many individuals, was consuming radical jihadist information online and was becoming radicalized here in the United States. Of course, he was born here and grew up here, and so we're looking at all of those connections as well to determine when did it happen and what was the point that led him to actually pick up that gun. I will actually be traveling to Orlando on Tuesday to continue my briefings. I'll be getting briefings on the ground, meeting with the victims, the first responders, and talking about the support that we're offering local law enforcement and those victims.
What's the latest on his wife? Will any charges be filed against
You know,
her?
it's really too early to talk about other individuals in the investigation right now, except to say that we are talking to everyone who had a connection to this killer. And of course, that includes family members. So we can find out what he said, what he did, how he appeared. All of that will be factored into the investigation.
Based on what you've learned, you mentioned that he was consuming radical information. Based on what you've learned, would the information that he was consuming have led somebody who took another look at him to say, hey, this person shouldn't be buying a firearm?
You know, it's too early to say that at this point. Obviously, in terms of individuals' online behavior, our access to that is much more limited, depending upon how they consume the information, when they consume it. So what we're looking at is once we get to an individual to the point where they are definitely on our radar, for example, they do come on a watch list or a no-fly list, making sure we have the tools that we can use to prevent gun purchases then.
Tell me exactly what we know about the gun store owner. What did he know? When did he report it? And then what was done when he did report whatever he did?
You're referring to the individual, the gun store owner whom the killer met with a while ago and talked about body armor?
Any gun
Yes.
show owner anywhere. So that's the one. And so what do we know about contacts between the gun show owners and the killer?
Well, we know that he went into at least 2 gun shops, and that on one occasion he did ask some questions about body armor and types of ammunition, but he didn't make a purchase. And so because he didn't make a purchase, no identifying information was left. But that gun shop owner did report that contact to law enforcement, and particularly once he realized that this individual was the killer in last week's tragic events, did of course make that connection and raise that. He then the killer then went to a different gun shop and purchased the guns that he used in this tragic event.
But there was no way in which the reporting could have done anything to stop the event because the reporting on the body armor was happened after the fact. I mean,
well, as far
this connection was
as
made.
far as we know, when the killer went to that shop and asked about body armor and ammunition, he didn't make a purchase. He was in fact referred to a different location, and so there was no identifying data kept on him. In the course of an unrelated investigation, agents were speaking to that gun shop owner, and that gun shop owner did say, someone did come in, I had concerns. So he did do exactly what we asked people to do. We thank him for that, we commend him for that. He did report that information then, and of course, once he realized, after the news broke last weekend, who the individual was, we were able to connect those dots.
Donald Trump has suggested today in my conversation with him that profiling should be increased to catch somebody like this who is increasingly radicalized or that comes from a community. What's your response to that?
Well, I don't have a response to any particular comment or certainly to anyone, any particular candidate at all. What I will say is that we conduct our investigations in ways that have the goal and the aim of determining how close people are to actually taking action. And that's how we conduct all of our investigations. When we find individuals who are making statements that cause concern, we will try and determine if they're going to continue to make those statements, for example, to an undercover or to someone who might already be a source. We're going to look at all of their activity, we look at their travel, and so we try and build an image of the person. And the issue is always, at what point does it shift from talk to action? And that's what we always look at in every case. And we're going to be going back and looking at every interaction with this killer to look at that same issue.
But last question quickly, is there faith in ongoing investigations? Is there faith at all a part of the mix of those things that you described in investigating?
Is there...
Their faith, their Muslim faith. Should that be a part of the mix of things that investigators look into?
You know, we look into everything. We look into everyone's community. And what I will say is that regardless of what community someone comes from, we look to that community as a source of information and as a source of knowledge. And so we hope that people who know this individual, whether they're the same faith or not, would of course raise the alarm as well. That is what happens in many of our investigations. We rely very heavily on that community.
All right, Madam Attorney General, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.